Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us tonight, Ian Ladyman, football editor of the Daily Mail, and Martin Hardy, Northern sports correspondent for the Times and the Sunday Times. Welcome to you both. Let's quickly rattle through the back pages. Familiar theme as Wednesdays, so we're ready to win the World Cup. Thomas Tuchel pictured at Wembley after being appointed England head coach. Tuchel in the eye, I will go if we fail. Some back page, Thomas Tuchel is their headline, and sidebar there concerning Eddie Howe. Eds, you lose in snub for English. Telegraph, front page of the sports supplement. Tuchel, this job is win or bust. The Mirror, Alf Wiedersehen, which is a reference to Sir Alf Ramsey. Guardian lead goes with 18 months to win the World Cup. Star back page has reach for the stars. Put your shirt on us ruling world again. And the Express, once more, very similar line. Reach for the stars. Also, it's got the sailing there as well. Upbeat Ainsley homing in on Kiwis. Good day for Britain in the America's Cup. I'll win you over at 10-1, but no word on Pep snub. So that's the 10 interviewed candidates referenced there for the England job. OK, gentlemen, welcome along. Let's start, Ian, with the back page of the Eye. That strong line, I will go if we fail. How much respect did Tuchel garner with that line?
Well, I was at Tuchel's press conference today. He's only got an 18-month contract, so that will be up after the World Cup. So I'd imagine if he doesn't do a particularly good job, then it won't be renewed. I must admit, I am quite surprised that it's a short contract, just as I'm surprised by the fact that he's not starting until January the 1st. Tuchel was impressive today. He was urbane, he was charming, he was witty, he was forthright, he was clever, just like he was when he was at Chelsea. He's a bright coach and a very confident talker. He certainly won't be fazed by that part of the job. I think when you've worked for Chelsea and Bayern and PSG, you don't work at clubs like that unless you know what you're doing in front of the media. But I am surprised that he won't be taking charge of the internationals that are coming up in November. He's the new England coach. Why not get to work? That bit doesn't quite make sense. I'm more alarmed by that than I am by the fact that he's suggesting that he might go if we don't win the World Cup.
Sam Wallace has been writing about that. We'll talk about that in due course. But Martin, let's take you to the back page of The Sun. Thomas Tuchel, the headline then. Tuchel's team to be feared and physical. Boss, I'll quit after World Cup if I fail. Martin, did he demonstrate not only great communication skills, but a great understanding of English people and in English football, the English style that we want to be played? He says that he'll do that. How reassuring for some would that be?
Well, maybe he's understood that delusional element of, one win in 27 major tournaments. And on his first day in post, he's talking about winning the World Cup on foreign soil. Because it's that simple. Maybe we've got a bit lost in the fact that he's German. Maybe he's the FA chasing that quick fix now. We've gone from DNA being the catchphrase, the buzzwords, to over the line. And I'm more concerned by the fact that people think England were close to win the European Championships. They reached the final through good fortune. You could argue they were closer to being knocked out in the group stage than actually looking a realistic winner at any point. So over the line suggests that because Gareth Southgate squeezed for pretty much every drop that he could out of that team and those players to reach finals and semi-finals and quarterfinals, that something inside English football has suddenly gone right. This is we are a country that fail in tournament football. 16 World Cups, 11 European Championships. I'm more concerned by this idea that England are now going to click their fingers and win the World Cup. Still haven't got a top choice goalkeeper who plays at a high level, who understands that don't give the ball to the opposition. 69 times, I think, and when he went long in the European Championships in crucial phases against Spain. England haven't got a left back they can rely on. They haven't got a holding midfielder. If you were to say to Pep, take Edison, Gvardiol and Rodri out of his team, I think even he might struggle. Straight away from day one to be saying that this whole system's going to win the World Cup, to me, seems delusional. Brave, perhaps, wins people over, perhaps. But, you're still not really addressing the real problem of English football, which is why are the team never good enough?
Well, Martin may have diluted any optimism in the room about and people at home about England's chances of winning the World Cup. But nonetheless, the Telegraph Sport has Tuchel. This job is win or bust. The New England manager sets sights on winning the World Cup, and German gives us best chance of success, claims Bullingham, the chief executive from the FA. You'll have heard physicality mentioned a lot down the years. Are you fearful that that's the route that Tuchel's going to take? It seems at times that maybe, as Martin alludes to, England have been outplayed rather than outmuscled in a lot of these games.
No, I'm not fearful about that. He also mentions style as well, Tuchel, today. But he knows why he's been hired. Martin's quite right. He's been hired to get England over the line. He's been hired to win the World Cup. That's why he's only been given one shot at a tournament in this quite short contract. England have tried every other way, as Martin alluded to there. We've tried to play the long game with Gareth Southgate, who had 8 years at it, and I think probably got England slightly closer maybe than Martin suggests there. And now that they feel that there's not a suitable English candidate to go down that line again, they've gone for the hit and run approach, which was to hire a serial winner, albeit not at international level. Tuchel himself today several times said quite categorically that there is a huge difference between club management and international management, and he was quite happy to say he doesn't know how that's going to go for him yet because he's not experienced it. But he is a winner. He has won things, and that is clearly what the FA have prioritised this time round. It's a little bit like Manchester United when Sir Alex Ferguson left. They went for the long term with David Moyes, and they cut him off at his knees after 6 months and went straight to Louis van Gaal and then on to Jose Mourinho to try and win things quickly. This is a similar approach that the FA have taken, and I hope for all of our sakes that it works out better for them than it did for Manchester United.
Indeed, a lot of long-term plans that never get past short-term problems, do they? But we're ready to win the World Cup, is Martin's paper, The Times. Tuchel embraces challenges of delivering first trophy since 1966 and says England have young, hungry players to do so. Your colleague here, Paul Joyce, with the report, Martin. In there he says that Tuchel believes they have the ingredients to prevail thanks to a generation of talented players. He says it's just nuances, it's just details. Would you disagree with that, or would you have to concede that at least Tuchel must believe it's possible given the squad?
I think when any new manager takes over, they believe everything is possible. They have to say the right words. To go back to Ian there, yes, I think England were probably quite close against Italy. That was the final where you thought they can really do this. The scoreline against Spain in the European Championships, I think, flattered England in that game, and the amount of time that they were serious winners in there was quite short. But I think there was progress, and we could see that. Thomas Tuchel has to say England, although actually, yes, he has to say he can bring success, but give me more than words. How are you going to do it? Is the system going to be changed? Are we going to have a style to this team? You're looking for England to progress, not through short-termism and through just from sound bites. I want to hear him say how they're going to do this. Harry Kane will be older come the next major championships in the World Cup. How is he going to get the best out of him? In the European Championships, he wasn't at his best. I know they've worked together and they have a close relationship. Can you develop Ollie Watkins to be a serious contender as a centre forward? Can you blend all these decent or emerging centre midfielders that England have got? And are we back to the conversation about, this golden generation that we had under Sven Goran Eriksson that struggled despite the fact you would say maybes? Wayne Rooney, Paul Scholes, Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, David Beckham probably are certainly towards the end of their careers and what they had achieved, are a stronger group of players than what has been inherited here. And are there enough good defenders for Thomas Tuchel to build a side? I would have liked to have seen some of that addressed today. I understand he has to get through day one and the fact that he's German and the conversations about passports and singing the national anthem, which kind of frustrate me because it removes the element of how are you going to make this team better, how are you going to make English football better, because it's a long-term failing of England at the very top level, and it's a huge job to try and arrest that, especially in 18 months, especially with not starting until January.
Yep, as you say, strong points and possibly some weaknesses in the squad as well. Ian, want to talk to you on the nationality issue because it remains a big one for some. The Daily Mail came into Wednesday, your paper, with the headline, Dark Day for English Football. The Metro, on a similar theme, though, has their back page heading into Thursday. I'll win you over. His passport's German, but Tuchel says, quote unquote, British edge and success can silence doubts. Ian, how do you think he handled the nationality question? He was quite diplomatic in a way, wasn't he? And I think, without saying he was English, and he was a big fan of lots of things English.
He handled it brilliantly. He knew it was coming, obviously. He'd had some time to think about it. And I got the impression that some of his lines were quite well rehearsed today. But nevertheless, he delivered them really well with a smile. He disarmed the media in many ways from that point of view. It's a very clever tactic to disarm journalists with a smile and humour. You look quite phlegmatic about it, and I think that's the only way that he can be moving forward. He said absolutely the right things when he was asked about the national anthem. He said he hadn't made his mind up, which gives him a bit of breathing space. He'll be hoping that everyone's forgotten about that by the time March comes around. I can assure him that we won't have. But the point he made was that whether he sings it or not, it won't be indicative of his commitment to the job, his passion for the job, his enthusiasm for this country, a country he's lived in before. And I absolutely think there's nothing wrong with that at all, as far as I'm concerned. If you commit yourself to a job like this, that comes with huge pressure, huge spotlight, huge scrutiny. He knows that the fact that he's not English will follow him around. He knows that some people will always look at him differently because of that. And if he is big enough to take that on, which he is, then he is certainly big enough not to lose any sleep, particularly over whether people criticise him when the national anthem is played at Wembley next March. So he dealt with it all as well as he could.
Yeah, whether he sings in English for the anthem or not, we will see. But wonderful communicator in not his native language. I suppose you have to give him that, Martin. You kind of alluded it to being a side issue, possibly distracting from the job at hand. What do you think the mood of the nation is out there as journalists? Do you feel you've got your finger on the pulse of what English fans think? Or are they divided about this issue of nationality?
I think probably divided is the right word there, Teddy. I think come a tournament, if the team starts to play well and do well and people get behind them, then the nationality won't be a factor. I think it feels relevant at the minute just because there was a surprise that it's him. This felt like a time when you had two really good English candidates in Graham Potter and Eddie Howe, who have managed Newcastle United and Chelsea teams at the top level, which has been kind of the thing against English coaches over the last 20 years. So they surely were knocking on the door. It'll be interesting to see what happens in 18 months, and I guess that may depend upon how successful Thomas Tuchel has been. But public mood will change once the team starts playing, and I do feel, agreeing with him, he should be starting by January. I would actually argue that he should be in post already. All the time that he spends winning people over, getting to know the players, impressing like he did today, because he's very smart and a good operator. This feels like a wasted period now, with no disrespect to Lee Carsley, who will go back to the under-21s. But I love the style of a Guardiola, but everybody gets won over by a team that wins games. And if they can do it convincingly, and if you can start to show that here's where I'm going to play Cole Palmer, here's where I'm going to play Phil Foden, here's where I'm going to play Jude Bellingham, this is what the team is going to look like, then I think people will probably get behind him pretty soon.
Yeah, that'll be a big question when it's trying to fit those three in. Martin and Ian, thank you very much for now. We will talk about the time frame starting in January. We'll talk about Eddie Howe as well, his connections with the job. We'll take a quick break now, though. When we come back, we'll look at more of the morning's papers, including this in the Mail. I went through hell. Friends just stopped ringing me. We'll talk about Paul Pogba's first interviews since his ban was reduced to 18 months. Welcome back. You are watching Back Pages tonight, and welcome back to Ian Ladyman, football editor of the Daily Mail, and Martin Hardy, Northern sports correspondent for the Times and the Sunday Times. So Martin, come back to you with the back page of the Sun, because it concerns your patch and Newcastle United's manager Eddie Howe. Edge you lose in snub for English, writes Charlie Wyatt, another friend of the show. Mark Bullingham claimed there is a lack of top-quality English coaches to choose from, yet never approached Eddie Howe. Put us straight, Martin. What's the situation regarding Howe in England?
From a personal perspective, and maybe from the perspective of Newcastle United fans, I think there will be great relief. I still think he'll become England manager at some point, or England head coach at some point. Great coach, great man manager, smart, funny, intelligent, and extremely proud to be English. And he has spoken of his desire to one day perhaps be England manager, and about how much he loved watching England play when he was young. I suspect he'll go there one day. I think a lot of stuff in life and in football comes down to timing. I wonder if Newcastle had won the Carabao Cup season before last, whether that would have altered the situation for him. I wonder if Newcastle progressing in the Champions League group stage last season would have altered it. I think very much from his perspective, there is work still to be done, despite a particularly rocky summer at Newcastle United. So I think from the FA, there was a fear that Eddie Howe would turn them down if they approached him, and there was also the not insignificant matter that there is a compensation clause in Eddie Howe's employment, and that would have cost somewhere between £5 and £10 million to release him from them. You would have had to start the conversation and possibly not got the man that you were going for. So I think from a lot of different elements, it didn't quite work now, despite the unrest about his position in the summer and the fact that created doubt about whether he would stay just as Newcastle manager, never mind moving on to England. As I said, I think he will. The FA have liked him from very early on in his Bournemouth career. He is doing very well at Newcastle. There's a lot of work still to be done. It's nice to see an English manager at one of the top clubs in the Premier League, and he's get on with them very well, and he still sees this as a great challenge and a great deal of work to be done. So that may come from, if you were Graham Potter right now, you'd be disappointed. He has shown that example of, starting right at the very, university coach, moving abroad and doing well at the bottom and winning titles in Sweden, coming to England, and he had a brand of football which I think a lot of fans now like. They like to know what the style is. Overlooking Graham Potter may be a more difficult explanation if you're trying to encourage the development of English coaches right now.
Yeah, Graham Potter out of work. Eddie Howe with an impressive CV leading Newcastle into the Champions League. But Ian, if he was too expensive, is it fair enough the FA didn't look at English coaches, not high enough up the tree at the moment in English football? And if so, who's to blame? Is it the coaches, or is the FA responsible in itself for not having those high-profile coaches?
I know I lay the blame, and I lay the blame firmly at the Premier League. I don't think it's an FA thing. I think there was a production line of coaches now coming through St George's Park. I think the FA have got a pathway to develop young coaches, but they can't. One thing the FA cannot do is tell Premier League clubs to give them jobs. And the fact is that there's a snobbery at the top of English football. There's a snobbery in English boardrooms. There's a snobbery, amongst some English supporters. There's a snobbery in some sections of the media about giving English coaches big jobs. If you are an English coach and you want to manage in the Premier League, the best chance of doing that by a mile is taking a club there yourself out of the Championship, like Eddie Howe did once upon a time with Bournemouth. Because the chances are that when the big jobs come up in the Premier League, you're not going to get one. There are only 4 managers in the Premier League at the moment British managers in the Premier League who've been given jobs by clubs while they were already in the Premier League. What happened last year at West Ham? David Moyes won West Ham a trophy in the Europa Conference League. A year later, they ran him out the door. Did they look at a British replacement? No, they didn't. A coach like Rob Edwards did a good job at Luton. Everybody thought he did a good job in getting Luton up, did a good job in trying to keep them up, and they went down. Nobody touched him. He's still there. And there are countless other examples like that. And that's the problem. If the FA want to appoint coaches with trophies on their CV, English coaches with trophies on their CV, they can't do it if they're not in work in the Premier League.
It's a big issue. We'll explore it in the future, I'm sure, on Back Pages tonight. Let's talk Paul Pogba, though. Sammy Mokbel in your paper. Ian, I went through hell. Friends just stopped ringing me. Back in March, potentially, be knocking on 32. How powerful was this interview? I want to get Martin's take on it. We've only got a couple of minutes, so just give me your thoughts on what Pogba's had to say to Sammy and on Sky Sports News as well.
Yeah, great exclusive by Sammy. Very quickly, look, Pogba, I understand Pogba's sense of frustration. I think we believe him. He didn't take the supplement on purpose, didn't know what was in it. The fact is, you have to take responsibility for everything you take as an athlete. Every athlete knows that. The great sadness for me with Pogba is that he's 31, 32 now. I won't say it's a career wasted because he won an awful lot in the first half of his career. But I saw him win a World Cup, score a goal in a World Cup final in Moscow in 2018, and he hasn't won a trophy since then. And there's a great sadness to that.
There is a great sadness to that. Martin, you've got about 45 seconds or so. I just wonder, wonderful talent, not based on pace, though. Teddy Sheringham was 31 when he moved to Manchester United. His best days are ahead of him. Could Pogba still salvage some magical moments?
He's a complete enigma. On the one side, we have a player who, before the 2018 World Cup final, and go and hunt it down on YouTube, give this brilliant, inspirational speech to his France teammates about how far we have come and do not let them take what is ours. Then you see, I think it's said in Sammy Mokbel's piece that he's wearing a pair of earrings with PP on. So he knows what earrings he's going to wear, but he doesn't know what supplement he's putting into his body, which ruins the latter part of his career. He probably has been hampered by something like Graham Souness's relentless criticism. As Ian said, excellent start of the career, but has not fulfilled that talent, I think.
We wish him all the best when he comes back in March, wherever he comes back. There is that interview on Sky Sports News, obviously, with Kaveh Solokol. That'll be available in the morning as well. More on that. Martin and Ian, thank you very much for your time tonight on Back Pages tonight. Brilliant to see you. And if you missed any of this show, another chance to see Back Pages tonight at hour. The show is also available as a podcast. Look for Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So join us again on Thursday night. The guests will be Henry Winter and Jonathan Liew. Jonathan has called the Tuchel England job a marriage of convenience, by the way. I wonder if he'll talk more about that.